Rise and shine, ready or not, here we come. Computer on. Ministry of Truth, memorandum to file. Topic, communist infiltration. Classification, unclassified. Stop. Begin memorandum to file. Author, Ministry of Truth. According to Sun Tzu, all warfare is based upon deception. And in December 2020, a joint statement was published in Congress stating Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Acting Chairman Marco Rubio, R. Florida, and Vice Chairman Mark Warner, Democrat, Virginia, released the following joint statement regarding the challenge posed to the United States by the Chinese government and the Communist Party. We agree with D&I Radcliffe that China poses the greatest national security threat to the United States. Our intelligence is clear. The Chinese Communist Party will stop at nothing to exert its global dominance. On June 19, 1953, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were convicted of conspiring to pass U.S. atomic secrets to the Soviets, were executed at Sing Sing Prison in Ossining, New York. And the Rosenbergs are considered martyrs for the communists in America. Nonetheless, on June 16, 2021, the House passed legislation that would establish June 19th as Juneteenth National Independence Day, a U.S. federal holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States, sending the bill to President Joe Biden's desk for his signature, and the bill passed the House 415-14 after the Senate unanimously passed the legislation. And all warfare is based upon deception. By proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln, Republican, declared that all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons and will do no acts to repress such persons, or any of them in any effort they make for their actual freedom. President Grant signed the act to readmit Texas to congressional representation on March 30th, 1870, and this federal act was promulgated throughout Texas by a general order issued by General Reynolds on April 16th, 1870, publicly acknowledging in the open source the legal defectiveness of the Emancipation Proclamation as a usurpation of the sovereign laws of the Confederacy and state of Texas, a part of a separate nation, and that property held in chattel slavery in Texas before that time, like a fetus, as established under the court precedent in Roe v. Wade, were therefore the legal property of their masters until that compelling point in 1870. On June 19, 1865, 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln's historic Emancipation Proclamation, U.S. Major General Gordon Granger issued General Order No. 3, which informed the people of Texas that all enslaved people, property, were now free, and did so while serving in the capacity of the commander for the headquarters district of Texas, while his troops had arrived in Galveston the previous day. In legal effect, therefore, even under the laws of battle, it was a promulgation published without any legal authority or effect. And it was his intent, however, reading the order at several locations in Galveston, to stir the slaves into open rebellion against the Cherokee Nation by enlisting them as buffalo soldiers, exploiting the fear that the Native American nations had for these particular soldiers, dividing and conquering a masterful ruse and deception tactics, exploiting the ignorance and desperation of the slaves in Texas, in leveraging an advantage position against the Cherokee Nation, albeit for official purposes, the last surviving regiment of the Confederate States, as the war powers were being redirected to their former purpose in the Indian Wars. Stanwati, also known as Stanhope Wati Gataga, and Isaac S. Wati, was a leader of the Cherokee Nation and a Brigadier General of the Confederate States Army during the Civil War. And when the Civil War broke out, most of the Cherokee Nation voted to support the Confederacy, and Wati organized a cavalry regiment. Wati became known as a gifted field commander and a bold guerrilla leader. And at the Battle of Pea Ridge in Arkansas in March 1862, his troops earned acclaim for capturing a Union battery in the midst of a Confederate defeat. On June 15, 1864, his men scored a major victory by capturing the Union steamboat J.R. Williams. The following September, they seized some $1.5 million worth of supplies on a federal wagon supply train at Cabin Creek. So committed was Wati to the Southern cause that he refused to acknowledge the Union victory in the waning months of the Civil War, keeping his troops in the field for nearly a month after Lieutenant General E. Kirby Smith surrendered the rest of the Confederacy's Trans-Mississippi Army on May 26, 1865 at Appomattox. For the Union Army, this marked the official transition from combating the states in the rebellion to the return of exclusively Indian wars that had been commenced against the Seminole and Cherokee nations decades before, with the Indian Removal Act, signed into law by the first Democrat President Andrew Jackson, a fierce and determined Indian fighter responsible for the Trail of Tears. A full 75 days after Robert E. Lee met with Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox, Wati became the last Confederate general to lay down arms, surrendering his battalion of Creek, Seminole, Cherokee, and Osage Indians to Union Lieutenant Colonel Asa C. Matthews at Dokesville on June 23rd, surrendering to an officer who was not even a general-level officer, indicative of insult, and rendering any orders issued by the commander for the headquarters district of Texas legally ineffective as to the property of the citizens of the sovereign state of Texas held in slavery, not restored to the Union until April 1870. Regarding the 13th Amendment, which declared that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, it is a historical fact that the necessary number of states, 3/4, ratified it by December 6, 1865. which would have been before the sovereign state of Texas would have been restored to the Union. Hence, not until 1870 would even the 13th Amendment have illegally abolished the peculiar institution of American chattel slavery in what had been the sovereign territory of Texas that had been in rebellion against a more perfect union. However, all warfare is based upon deception, and the truth shall set you free. Under U.S. v. Salerno, any regulation or act is deemed to be legitimate unless there are no circumstances under which it should be held as valid. This briefing is unclassified. Happy Juneteenth, Ministry of Truth, end of transmission. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb. Honest.